everybody, and welcome to this, the Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Very glad that you're able to spend some time with us as we get you into another cold start to the day. But people are telling me it's warming up pretty quick outside. I was up early this morning. It was minus 14 at my place, and it was just frigid cold. I thought we were getting through this, but apparently we are. Apparently that this cold stuff now is starting to move its way out, and tomorrow the temperatures are going to warm up. The unfortunate part with that is that Alistair's telling us this morning that there's a system that's moving its way into the area. Could bring up to 10 centimeters of snow with it, but if you look at the entire forecast, you'll see temperatures up and around the 5, 6, 7 degree mark. So I'm going to suggest that snow is going to be that wet, sloppy, back-breaking stuff, but there will be probably some rain attached to that. And some of the discussion around the water cooler here this morning was that people aren't even going to shovel it because it's going to get warmer, and they're going to get a chance to see it melt. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but it looks like another snow, I'm not going to say event, but a snow day, and that's probably a bad word to use as well. Snow accumulation, we'll say, on the ground here in HRM and around Nova Scotia. Of course, we're keeping our eyes on what's going on in the Middle East these days. The war in Iran continues. Some of the headlines I picked up this morning in watching some of the coverage on the networks and on the wires is that there was a series of Iranian attacks in the Persian Gulf today. They hit the embassies in Saudi Arabia and in Kuwait. The bombing campaign in Iran itself continues. The American air power flexing its muscle. And the Iranian Red Crescent, which is, of course, their equivalent to the Red Cross that we have, is reporting 787 people have been killed since the outbreak of violence began there on the weekend. I said earlier, and we will continue to keep our eyes on that, and we'll bring you any new information that comes available during our 3 hours with you here on the program today. Well, there has been a lot of focus on this session of the legislature, to say the least. It's been a while since the politicians, the MLAs, the ministers, the premier were back at work here in Halifax. And of course, with this new session came a budget. And there's been a lot of discussion about that budget as well, with some of the items in that budget raising perhaps some eyebrows with a lot of people with regards to funding cuts and potential job losses and deficit budgets, $1.19 billion, and debt numbers and so on and so forth, and interest payments. But there has also been some legislation that's been introduced into the House during this session, and one of the very first bills that was brought in this session was a bill that is designed, at least from the government perspective, to strengthen our cannabis laws in Nova Scotia. And I'm very happy to welcome into the studio today the person behind said legislation, and that is the Minister of Justice. Can I call you the Attorney General? Can I call you the government's lawyer? What can I call you, Scott Armstrong?
Well, it's the official title is Minister of Justice and Attorney General for Nova Scotia, but I'm here to discuss the policies and the legislation we're bringing forward. So you can call me whatever you want.
All right, Scott. I guess the first question, the broad question with this is, we legalized cannabis in Nova Scotia and Canada in general in 2018. Why has it taken so long for you to come with these rules? Why now?
Well, what these are amendments to the existing legislation, the Cannabis Control Act. And as you said, the cannabis was first legalized in Canada in 2018. And the reason the federal government legalized it, if you go back in time and listen to what Prime Minister Trudeau at the time said, was for three reasons. One was to keep cannabis out of the hands of youth, to make sure that people who were using recreational cannabis were getting a safe supply approved by Health Canada. And the third reason was to keep the proceeds out of the hands of organized crime, who use the proceeds for other nefarious purposes, money laundering, the importation of other more serious drugs like cocaine and other pharmaceuticals, and other nefarious activities like human trafficking. So to try to get a hold of organized crime, protect youth, and make sure people have a safe supply that they can count on what's in it. So the province had to bring in, and all provinces did, legislation of how they were going to distribute cannabis. And in Nova Scotia, the Liberal government at the time under Premier McNeil brought in the policy that the NSLC was going to be the sole distributor of cannabis across Nova Scotia. That system is one we support as a government because it does control cannabis sales, because at the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation, of course, there's age verification, just like there is for alcohol. It keeps a supply that's only from approved Health Canada licensed producers, and the proceeds flow into government. The taxes flow into government and the NSLC, so it keeps any profits out of the hands of organized crime. So what we have currently is we have a black market parallel distribution set up across Nova Scotia. This is very concerning because when you are using cannabis from an illegal dispensary, you have no idea what's in it. You have no idea the potency. You have no idea where it's been produced. It's not approved by Health Canada, which violates the federal legislation. And as I said, the only legal seller of cannabis in Nova Scotia is the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation. So in support of the police, we're trying to give them the powers they need to more effectively enforce the current law. So these are mostly administrative changes that allow them to do their job better.
The black market has existed prior to and in the year of the legalization, Minister. Why has it taken 7 years for a government here in Nova Scotia to act to strengthen these laws?
Well, the police have been enforcing illegal cannabis distribution all along. So the police do have the tools. They have been, they do raids, they arrest people, they fine people. What they were running against now is because recently we've seen a large increase in the number of illegal dispensaries across the province. And there's been several recent studies, health studies, that show the actual damage cannabis can do. I tabled many of these in the legislature last week. There's been a couple more. And particularly for youth, we have seen the long-term damage that cannabis can do if it's ingested and initiated early, particularly during adolescence. The effect on the teenage brain, even up to the age of 25. We knew this was the case, but what we're seeing is an increase in worldwide studies, including Canadian studies, that show the actual damage. So this is something we need to give the police powers to stem, because I'm very concerned as a former school principal. I've seen students who have been using cannabis. I've seen anxiety, depression, other more serious issues like psychosis in some cases. So we know that this is now backed up by medical research. So we're trying to give the police the powers that they need to keep it out of the hands of youth, and also make sure that the legal cannabis distribution system we've set up for the NSLC is supported, because then we have a safe supply. We know where it's from. We know what's in it. And from my discussions with Dr. Strang, the Chief Medical Officer of Nova Scotia, he's also very concerned that the parallel black market dispensaries are normalizing this, and it's helping youth get it in their hands more. And that's something we want to stop.
Premier Houston said, Minister, that he has heard that some of the cannabis that's being sold in these dispensaries across the province is laced with fentanyl. I've not been able to find any evidence of that. Do we have evidence that there's fentanyl in the weed?
From talking to our police agencies, they're concerned at times that there can be cross-contamination, particularly if it's through an illegal dispensary, where they might be getting their cannabis from networks that actually deal with like cocaine, other pharmaceuticals, and synthetics like fentanyl, because you don't know what's in it. So I don't think there's been a case in Nova Scotia. They've investigated and arrested someone, but there has been different studies that have shown illegal cannabis across the country has been laced with things in different places. But in Nova Scotia and other places, we do know that when it's produced locally or internationally or in a different province, sometimes they've been able to determine there's different metals in the cannabis. There's been pesticides wherever they're growing it, which are illegal in terms of what Health Canada, their restrictions are putting on the legal producers. So the question is, when you buy from an illegal distribution, you don't know what you're getting. You don't know what it could be laced with. You don't know the potency. And when you buy from the liquor corporation, you know the potency, it's been tested, and every single one of the production facilities, both here in Nova Scotia and other provinces, has to maintain a lot of inspections through Health Canada so that we know there's a safe supply. So I think that's the Premier's point in that. We want to make sure that what we're producing and distributing in the province is safe and dependable and reliable.
Mr. Armstrong, some in the legal community have suggested that your announcement back in December of last year with the Premier to ask police to crack down on these illegal dispensaries, plus these new rules that you introduced as part of legislation, unfairly target the Indigenous community here in Nova Scotia. Is that in fact the case?
Not at all. This is not in any way targeting anyone. It's a public safety issue. We do have some dispensaries on First Nations, run by First Nations. We have some that are off. Some are big, some are small. The problem is when you have the parallel black market set up, it doesn't achieve the goals that the legalization of cannabis was intended to do in 2018. I talked about it. We want to keep it out of the hands of youth. We want to ensure a safe supply, and we want to keep the proceeds out of the hands of organized crime. Having a parallel black market system that runs alongside of the legal system doesn't achieve those goals. It undermines them. So the very reason cannabis was legalized in Canada is impeded by a black market system. So what we want to do with First Nations, though, is work with them. So this is why last March, just almost a year ago, we set up a plan where any First Nation band in the province of Nova Scotia can partner with the NSLC. We will put a legalized cannabis NSLC-run shop on the reserve so people can get legal cannabis. They have age verification through the NSLC, so we'll keep it out of the hands of youth. But the most important thing for the bands is they will be able to keep all the profits and proceeds from that shop, which is operating on the reserve, and those profits can be then used for positive social programs on the reserve. So we would like to partner. We've had discussions with several First Nations. We haven't got a signed agreement as of yet, but we believe as a government we want to support First Nations. We want to work with them. We believe we kind of have a sweet spot in that system. And what I like about it, it achieves those three things. It keeps it out of the hands of youth. It's a safe supply. But then the proceeds will flow to the band, and we've seen many bands across the province initiate several programs for the residents on reserve that are really positive, and we'd like to support that. So that's in terms of what we want to do and work with First Nations. We think that's a much more positive system than allowing an illegal black market to operate both on and off reserve.
You have referred to it as the parallel black market minister. The Indigenous communities will say that they have a treaty right in order to sell these products as part of their treaty truck plan. There's no, as I understand it, there has been no decision from a court on whether or not this applies to the treaty rights. And are we moving into a slippery slope here because of all of the unknowns in the cannabis world?
So, it's not true that there has been no legal decision. Like, there was one here in Nova Scotia, R versus Marshall et al. In June of the 7th of 2024, where it actually said that it is not a treaty right. That has been appealed, so that's going to work itself through the system. But there's been several court decisions across the country that say this is not a treaty right. I'm not going to get into the legalities during this interview, but we do have a legal precedent. Now, we want to work with First Nations. We're prepared to have open discussions with them on this. We've talked to many, and those discussions will continue. But we believe we can set up a system working with First Nations so they can have cannabis sales on reserve, but keep the profits with the governing organization, which is through the bands, on reserve, so they can use the profits for positive things.
Different jurisdictions like Ontario, Minister, have a different approach to the way that they handle cannabis. They have shops. They sell it very much like the tobacco product that we know is in corner stores and gas stations here in Nova Scotia. Why do we in Nova Scotia have to have this controlled at the NSLC level? Would it not be better to open it up to stores and enforce the rules like we enforce the rules with cigarettes?
So what we're trying to do is make it more like alcohol, right? So when we set it up in Nova Scotia, just like alcohol is run through the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation, we had a system that we were pretty satisfied with in terms of alcohol. As soon as cannabis became legalized across the country, we looked, what is the best system for Nova Scotia? And we looked at a very successful system in terms of alcohol. And we think that's still the best system for Nova Scotia. So we're going to try to align it. That's what the former McNeil government did. That's what we continue to support, and that's why we're going to remain with that. Ontario and some of the other provinces that have more private distributors, they have a different policy for alcohol as well. But we already had a system that worked in Nova Scotia, and that's the one we support currently.
Mr. Armstrong, we're out of time. I appreciate you coming in today and spending some time with us.
Great. I really appreciate the opportunity, Dan, and we wish you all the best and enjoy the warm weather tomorrow.
Hopefully we'll get some weather. That is Minister Scott Armstrong, the Attorney General, Minister of Justice here in Nova Scotia. We're going to take our first break here on the program. When we come back, a Bronx cheer for the Premier at a conference earlier this weekend. We'll talk to somebody who was there. In fact, the person who videotaped the whole thing will be joining us. Ryan Summers will be on the show right after this break. All right, welcome back. You may know our next guest as DJ RS Smooth. We know him as Ryan Summers, and we've dealt with him as he teaches the youngsters over there at NSCC. But Ryan, you made the news this week, and it wasn't for some of the jams that you're spinning or some of the teaching that you're doing.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Your video has gone kind of viral from that conference this weekend.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, someone told me, pull out the phone and record this because who knows what's going to happen. So, yeah.
For those of us out there listening, Ryan, that don't know what we're talking about, tell me a little bit about how that whole thing with the Premier unfolded at the event you were at this weekend.
Yep, so it was Saturday night at the Halifax Convention Center, the annual African Heritage Month Gala. There's usually galas throughout the month, but Halifax does theirs at the end of the month. And so I'm pretty sure in recent years, Premier's been there, the mayor, lieutenant governor, so it's like a big deal with, dignitaries, politicians, whatever. So earlier that day, I was DJing, I usually DJ as the event ends. I was there for a sound check, and somebody mentioned the Premier, and he was going to be speaking, and I was like, what? Really? And I mentioned to someone else, and they're like, no, you must be mistaken. It takes a lot to book him, blah, blah, blah. And normally I only arrive about an hour before I have to play. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be here for the whole thing tonight. And then so when we were in the green room with the band and they announced the Premier was about to speak, so Owen Lee was with me. He's like, we should be in the room to see this. So we ran to the room, and in 20 seconds that it took us to get there, by the time we opened the door, all you could hear was booing and, commotion. So I was standing there trying to listen. I was like, let me just pull my phone out and record what's happening here. So, yeah.
Right. And that video is certainly making the rounds. I've watched it myself. And, on occasion when a politician makes a speech, you'll hear some grumbling or the odd boo or maybe a heckler in the crowd. But this was more than that.
For sure. I mean, I don't, look at the timing. Obviously, to book the Premier, I would imagine you have to do it well in advance. So whoever invited him wouldn't have known that these cuts were coming and the type of cuts that were coming, and that days later, the gala would be there. So, I mean, it's very fresh in everyone's mind. And you're talking to a community who a lot of the cuts affect. So, I mean, obviously, people were going to, display their displeasure with, the cuts. But the other thing, I don't know if you know, and I didn't know this until Sunday morning, but there was actually instructions on a piece of paper. I don't know who they were distributed to. Obviously they couldn't have been on every table or the Premier would have saw it, I would imagine. But, and that said, they wanted people to stand up when he spoke, or any government official, including the Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs. They just wanted people to stand up with their fists, right fist in the air,
right.
And silently. But I was like, silently, if you put that on a piece of paper, I feel like you're going to get the opposite, let alone people wouldn't do it silently anyway. A protest is supposed to be disruptive and, to make your point and get your point across. So I'm pretty sure they did, and the Premier heard it loud and clear.
I was going to say, it sounds like they got their point across very loud and clear.
Definitely. Yeah.
Ryan,
I mean, I don't know if he was trying to get through his speech. I'm not sure what. If he just was trying to stick to the talking points, but yeah, just, it didn't I think he acknowledged when he was talking that obviously the boos were happening, and, he's like, we'll make time for conversations, blah, blah, blah. But yeah.
Right. Did he make it all the way through?
Well, see, that's what I mean. I don't know what he had planned, so I don't know if he cut it short or if he just, yeah.
What, I'm sure you had conversations with people in the room. What were their thoughts?
Well, I think, a lot of people were, because the difference is, and this is what I mean for full disclosure, I do have a video of people booing the African Nova Scotian minister as well, but the video's longer because I felt like some people were trying to maybe hear her out a bit, and not everyone in the room was booing the premier. There were people sitting, I think, maybe trying to listen. Maybe they thought, oh, it's rude to boo someone who's speaking. So out of courtesy, being adults, let's listen. But I think it was very effective to send the message in that way that nobody is happy about these cuts.
Certainly impacts the feeling in the room, doesn't it?
Most definitely. I mean, a lot of people there were some people who actually felt uncomfortable because technically a gala, especially the placement of this one being at the end of African Heritage Month, is supposed to be a celebration, a celebratory event. And so to have somebody there who is responsible for what's going to bring a lot of negativity and, the opposite of celebration to a lot of these communities, a lot of people, like some people felt uncomfortable and felt maybe he shouldn't have been there because it would evoke those feelings within people. So.
Well, it's access to the decision makers, and they should face their decisions, right?
Exactly. I mean, I thought at least he showed up. Like, I don't know. I've been wrestling with the right word. I don't know if it's respect, but I mean, I give it to him that at least you came, and he could have sent somebody else, which probably would have been obviously went over even worse, but at least he was there to face people. So, yeah.
Appreciate the video, Ryan, and appreciate the time on the show today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
That's Ryan Summers, who his video is gone viral with the video of people at that gala down in Halifax's downtown on the weekend, rising up from their chairs and booing the premier quite loudly. It was disruptive. I'll call it disruptive, and I think that was the message. And I think since we've heard from Ryan that this was a bit of an organized effort, then. I think mission accomplished, right? We know that politicians tend to, I've said this before, to float with the way that the breezes are blowing, and there are some cuts that were announced in this budget of last week that aren't sitting well in the community. And we know that isn't the only form of protest that's going to happen over some of these cuts. We've heard from several organizations and groups in the culture community and the art community and the tourism community are planning to gather tomorrow in downtown Halifax to raise their specter of their disappointment and their concern and demand that the premier reconsider some of the cuts that were made to their budgets, to their funding, to their grants, to their jobs for some. And we will certainly keep our eye on that. It's supposed to happen at noon tomorrow in downtown Halifax. Did you see this, or did you hear this on the news today? Wind power seems to be the topic du jour here in Nova Scotia. Last week, we saw the unveiling of a plan to build a wind farm down on the South Shore, the Mersey River project, that's going to generate enough power, I guess, to power 50,000 homes, although a good chunk of that, if not half of it, has already been spoken for. Well, we saw another announcement early this morning. In fact, I saw the release came out around midnight. That the company that's trying to build the first hydrogen plant in Nova Scotia has now got $240 million in project financing. Everwind Fuel CEO Trent Vishy says the money will be used to advance the first phase of the company's project, which includes 4 wind farms and a hydrogen production plant in Point Tupper. He says the project will create 100 long-term skilled jobs, 500 construction jobs, and over $1 billion in local contracts and procurement opportunities. An Indigenous consortium led by Cape Breton's Membertou First Nation holds a 51% ownership in the first phase of the wind portfolio. Canada and the European Union, of course, have been working to bring Canadian hydrogen to the continent as a way for them to get off of energy imports from Russia. Everwind says the first energy should flow in 2028 with the hydrogen plant coming online a few years later. The concern, at least for me, I don't know if it's concern, but the question, at least for me, is that when President Trump started all of his President Trump stuff and was talking about 51st states and Canadian sovereignty, everybody kind of closed ranks and decided to buy Canadian first. Well, the investing company, the money that put in the $240 million for Everwind's project, is an American firm based out of New York. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? We're back after the news. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand, and we're going to carry on here on a Tuesday edition of the program. We know that the arts community is certainly in the headlines these days with the budget coming out last week and a number of groups and organizations around the province losing some, if not all, of their funding. And the arts community is certainly vibrant, and it's certainly is organizing here in our part of the world, and I don't think that we have seen the end of it. That all being said, there are still events that are going on, despite all of the consternation that's going on in the arts community these days. And one of them is a celebration, can I call it that, of public art in downtown Halifax. And I'm very pleased to welcome into the studio today to tell us a little bit more about this, Jonathan Goldson, a Placemaking Manager at the Downtown Halifax Business Commission. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And artist and founder of the Halifax Mural Festival, that's Mike Burt. Mike, how are you?
Good, thank you.
The Mural Festival, I took a look at it last year, right, and saw some of it's got its own real niche, right? It's a form of art, but it's a different form of art.
Yeah, definitely. It's large scale, and we really focus on giving the artists a chance to produce their own work, and I feel that really shows through with the murals. And
a space too, right, to do it.
Correct.
Because as you said, these aren't small.
They aren't easy to get. People own the buildings, and they're expensive. So yeah.
Right. I got to ask you, Mike. You're an artist. Obviously, you have a festival, and I'm sure I've been speaking with people in your community with regards to some of these provincial cuts that have been announced. Your thoughts on them?
Yeah, not happy. Sad time for that. We're going to be protesting it tomorrow, so I'll shout that out. But I'm still waiting on my grants, hopefully for the festival. But we're going to press on either way,
right.
And I think that's what artists do. So yeah.
How important are these events, Jonathan, in the downtown community? Obviously, anytime we can create an event that brings people downtown, it's good not only for the event and for the artists to get their stuff looked at, but for businesses and such downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. The Halifax Mural Festival has brought so much vibrancy to different spaces within downtown Halifax, due to the amazing work that Mike and his team do to not only get artists together, but secure permissions for various walls. They're able to spread different stories that public art is able to captivate and to bring to persons on a very large scale. We're very blessed at the Downtown Halifax Business Commission that through the Gritty to Pretty program, we've been able to support artists, and it's through collaborations and sponsorships of festivals like the Halifax Mural Festival that help keep our program alive and allow us to connect with different artists. And so in terms of a celebration, while there is a lot of heartfelt sentiments going out to the arts community, we're very grateful that we were able to celebrate artists last weekend, the work that they've done over the last 10 years to help bring so much vibrancy to our downtown.
Mike, tell me a little bit about the process involved in creating. I mean, we've all seen the murals downtown. We've seen how the scale of these things and the medium, probably not the easiest medium to work with, right? With it being brick or concrete. Tell me a little bit about the process from start to finish. What kind of timeline is it to create a mural that, like on the side of a building?
Well, yeah, a lot of them, can take a while. I mean, the planning process is one you never really see. So, getting the lifts or getting all your paint, mocking it up on the building can be time-consuming, but you don't see that. But as far as painting, it's usually between a week, 2 weeks for super large ones, and the artists are just grinding it out.
Right.
It takes a lot of work. I'm sure they're tired afterwards.
And it's weather dependent, and so if you have a big rainstorm come through, that kind of messes things up.
Yeah.
Right?
The second year we had it was 4 or 5 days. I called it the Halifax Rain Festival, and but artists will get umbrellas and towels for the wall, and we just press on through. Artists are resilient. So
is it a big community? There are a lot of people that do that type of art.
More and more. It was small at first. I got to show that I come from a graffiti background.
Right.
I feel like that's where it kind of stemmed from, painting large, taking public space back. But it has grown to all kinds of different niches, and there's a really thriving community here in Halifax. So,
obviously, graffiti sometimes gets a negative image attached with it. but some will also consider that to be street art. Does this take it to the next step by having a festival and I hate to say legitimizing it, but to put it more into a public space?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's bridging the gap a bit, in like we all got lumped in as one, where like
Right.
any sort of community like that has their negative and positive. So I feel like it highlights that positive part of it and pushes it forward. So
When's the festival run?
July 4th to 11th this year.
Right. So it's the summertime. You can get down there and enjoy the sunshine. And how, do you have any idea how many people are going to participate this year?
No, we had 45 last year,
Wow.
so maybe not that many this year. But I'm trying to get as many as I can with the help of Downtown Halifax. We're going to be primarily on the waterfront this year, but throughout Halifax. And just all come down and check it out.
Why did Halifax, the Downtown Halifax Business Commission, get involved in this, Jonathan? Did you decide that it was a good partnership with the Mural Festival?
So in terms of public art downtown, it's safe to say that Downtown Halifax, through the Gritty to Pretty program, is responsible for easily about 80% of the different murals and public art installations that you see. And so when Mike brought to our attention that he was hoping to enhance the opportunities for different artists through the Halifax Mural Festival, it was very much a no-brainer for us. Mike actually also sits on our Gritty to Pretty jury, which is a collection of about 10 placemaking and public art professionals who decide on the different projects that we approve each year. And so through Mike's level of expertise, not only as a muralist, but someone who can gather the art community together, it instilled us a faith and confidence that he was not only going to deliver on a successful festival, but also enhance our downtown through public art in a way that has been so meaningful for many spaces, not just the waterfront, as Mike has noted, but even the Grafton Street Art Hub, which has been home to so many iconic pieces over the last few years.
Instability, obviously, now in the arts market, Jonathan. I'll ask you, programs like Gritty to Pretty and other opportunities that you give for people to produce their art, any concerns that they may be in jeopardy now that we're seeing funding cuts?
Absolutely. At our celebration event for 10 years of Gritty to Pretty, we were able to speak to some of the artists and some of the organizations that were affected, and it was very hard for us to hear how disparaging it's going to be to so many individuals, so many communities. As the Downtown Halifax Business Commission, at this moment in time, all that we can do is to support the artists through the programs that we have and ensure to do so in a way that's meaningful and authentic, not just providing persons a wall where they have to do what, say, the property owner says, but allowing them to tell their stories, because at the end of the day, artists are storytellers and they need a canvas to share their stories with different members of the public. And so we're grateful to do that. And for any of the artists that are affected, we highly encourage them to go to our website, Gritty to Pretty, Downtown Halifax /Gritty to Pretty, and to see our applications and apply, because there is opportunities for individuals that are affected, and we'd love to connect and work with them.
Mike, we wish you the very best with the festival this year, and we'll likely see you tomorrow downtown with the rest of the arts community.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And Jonathan, appreciate you coming in and sharing with us this important outlet for public art. Art should be for everybody, right? And it should be available for everyone. And programs like this take sort of art that was kind of in the shadows and bring it out to the forefront. I think that's important.
100%, and thanks for having us.
We're going to take another break here on the program. When we come back, The Right to Be Wrong author Ray Robertson will be your guest. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. Never easy to admit that you're wrong. It is not, I think, in our DNA to admit that we're wrong, and or make it easy to admit that we're wrong, I will say. But over recent years, that has become increasingly difficult. And I don't think I have to explain the world to you, right? Since even since the pandemic, we've become so divisive as a community. We've become so divisive as a nation, and now it's I'm right or I'll just yell louder. And I think, and this next book that we're going to talk about here digs into this subject matter. I think that we've lost the ability to admit that we're wrong, and we've lost the ability to have an open conversation about it. Very pleased to welcome into the show today the author of The Right to Be Wrong, and that is Ray Robertson. Ray, am I correct?
That is right. I don't have to say anything. You said everything about the book I have to say. So that's
Tell me a little bit about the process of this. I mean, did you start out thinking you're going to write a book about how we've lost the ability to say that we're perhaps wrong?
Well, I think it was born more out of the fact that everyone else tells you that you're wrong and they're right and you better be quiet or I'll say bad things about you. I just found it's increasingly, I guess the pandemic was when I really started to notice it, but I think it's been an increasing tendency that, there's two sides and there's right and left or this and that, and if someone disagrees with you, you yell back at them and hopefully use all your powers to stop them from speaking. And I just find this is not only negative for society because you can't have a conversation anymore, it seems, without yelling. But I think it's just bad. It's just not a very interesting life. When you live in an echo chamber, I guess that's reassuring in a way because everyone around you thinks the same things. We're all on the same team. But I just don't think it's a very interesting, vibrant life. And certainly it has negative consequences for a society, which starts to, as we've seen, there's two sides, and you can't cross over, and you're being disloyal if you think about the issue longer than 2 seconds it takes to text something. So I just found it just sort of, I'm a very non-political, I try to stay away from the world. I'm a writer. I sort of hide away with my dog, but I found that it was necessary to sort of say, wait a minute here.
How big a role does social media play in that?
Huge. I talk about it a little bit in the book. It's a very slim book because I'm not providing any answers. It's more just sort of getting the conversation going. But it's almost, you're obligated now to post something about your feelings about some issue that maybe you thought 20 seconds about, or you saw a newspaper headline, or you saw a tweet about, I'll be on that side and I'll put myself out there. Back in the olden days, you at least had to go buy a stamp and mail a letter off to the editor. Now you just have to pick up your phone. And I think it encourages that kind of reactionary thinking, whether it be left or right. My book's not about the left or the right. It's a pox on both houses in a way. It's just too easy. I don't think that one's thoughts on these important issues should be that easy to come up with. I think they should take conversation, for example, with other people who think differently than you, and reading and thinking. And I think there's too much of an expectation of hot takes. And I think hot takes are sort of the death of a contemplative mind that will go deeper into these things.
Also, the anonymity, right? It used to be that if you disagreed with somebody, you'd be staring across the table or around a water cooler. Now it's an avatar and a fake name.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's sort of the companion to the mob idea, except that you're exactly right. Except you're anonymous. Well, in a mob, you're anonymous as well. One of the nice things about this book is I've been able to put a lifetime's worth of reading in there of some very, very brilliant people, not just philosophers, but artists, musicians, whoever, and that same kind of thought throws through. This is not a new problem. They're just these periods of fundamentalism that pop up every certain number of decades, and it's not unique, so that's kind of encouraging in a way. This isn't like a unique modern problem.
No.
It goes on in all contexts, and not just political. It could be personal as well. So yeah.
Or it can delve into where you say you used to read the headlines from the sports page. Just talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs for 5 minutes.
Well, I'm a Detroit Red Wings fan, so I'm really happy to talk about the Maple Leafs. I've lived in Toronto since 1985, and my father and I grew up in a place called Chatham near Windsor. So, yeah. So it's been a tough 9 years, but they're on the decline now. So my dad and I are quite happy about that.
I would imagine, and even to take it one step further, talking about Olympic hockey, right?
Right. Well, that's another thing that's interesting, right? My mother does not generally watch women's hockey or snowboarding, but when it's Canada versus the rest of the world, she's interested. It's just, as you said on your little intro, it's part of our DNA, this us versus them divisiveness. And I think in a sports context, it can be kind of liberating, kind of fun. Hey, cheer for our side and boo the other side. but it's not reality. It's sports, which I love. And I think we've taken that attitude, though, toward things like morality and politics, which I think is not just dangerous and bad manners. I just don't think it's kind of what life should be about. Yeah.
The book is called Right to Be Wrong. Is it out now, Ray?
Yeah, actually last Saturday it pubbed, and actually the launch for Toronto was tomorrow. So, yeah, it's just so brand new, but it seems to have clicked with a few people. I think there's been too much, like we should, there was a piece from it published in the Globe last Saturday, and some of the comments I was pleased to see were, I didn't know you're allowed to say this in 2026,
right.
Or thank you for saying, and it's not like I'm saying anything radical. I'm not saying anything our grandparents didn't say, which is people should be allowed different opinions without you killing them. It's really not that radical, but I think where we are in our culture, it's coming across as kind of a strong statement, which I think is more of a comment on where we live or what times we live in.
Where can someone get Right to Be Wrong?
Pretty much everywhere. It's published by Cormorant Books, a very well-known Canadian publisher. So I guess your local independent bookstore or Amazon or maybe even directly from Cormorant. But, yeah. Ray,
appreciate it and best of luck.
Thanks so much, Dan.
That is Ray Robertson, the author of The Right to Be Wrong. It really is, and it I think is it's getting worse, right? We see it from our leadership. We see it from our community, right? We see it from social media, which is probably the wrong way to take a look at anything. And I think that it was born of people being scared and people being confined, and that was the pandemic. It used to be, and hey, we deal in opinion here on this show every day. It used to be that you could have an intelligent conversation on a thorny subject, and people wouldn't get extremely upset. People would get mad. They would raise their voices, but that's the idea of open dialogue and having a conversation. Well, we just don't do that anymore. I've used the example of the President of the United States several times, where if you agree with what the President of the United States is doing or his policy, you're one of the great ones. Use the Supreme Court example on the tariffs, right? If you disagree with what the President of the United States says, you're automatically a left-wing radical, or you're not patriotic, or you are trying to destroy the country. The same thing has happened in politics in Canada. If you disagree with a policy statement from the leader of the opposition or even the government, you're automatically a lefty or a righty. There's no middle ground anymore. There's just none. You can take any subject that we've talked about here for years on this program, and there's just no middle ground anymore. Have we lost the ability to have an adult discussion about issues that affect us? Might be something you want to talk about on the open hour today. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Regular rules apply, folks, as always. You can bring whatever opinion, whatever topic you want to discuss to the show. We'll certainly welcome those. May not agree with them all, but we certainly will welcome them. But have we lost the ability to listen and to admit that we're wrong? We're back after the news. All right, welcome back. It's time for the open hour. The lines are open, folks. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Regular rules apply. You can bring whatever it is to the table. That's the beauty of the open hour. I did ask the question before the break if we've lost the ability to have a conversation. My way or the highway? has become the vernacular for many. If you disagree with me, either you're on the team or you're off the team. I don't know how many more analogies I can spread throughout this. But that being said, have we lost the ability to have a discussion? I think it's pretty obvious, right? Now, I get the world of politics, right? I get that there is different beliefs in the way that you can influence the voter. When's the last time at a provincial level of government or at the federal level of government when, let's say, a government side of the house or of the bench put forward a piece of legislation that most would consider to be helpful for Canadians or for Nova Scotians, and the opposition said, yeah, good idea. Or they put a bill forward and had debate on the bill. I know that debate gets limited these days. And everybody said, yeah, you know what, that works. We saw instances of the Liberals under Mark Carney essentially taking some of the platform of the Conservatives and Mr. Poilievre and instituting it as part of their platform and has been put before the House. Some of it's even become law. And not to point fingers, but the opposition didn't like that. They said it was a good idea, but they stole our ideas, right? There's always confrontation. There's always trying to own somebody. And I think that social media has the biggest blame of it all. I think that people on social media live in their own little echo chambers, as our author said. And when you are exposed to a subject and all you read is one point of view, that becomes a pressure point. And then when somebody challenges that, instead of having a discussion and trying to figure out where both sides are, it's immediately you're a lefty or a righty or whatever. There's no discussion anymore. We've lost the ability to have discussion. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Matthew.
Hi, good morning.
What's on your mind?
I'd like to talk about this topic. I really think that COVID broke people to an extent that I don't know if we can come back from. I mean, we were essentially locked in our homes for, I don't know the duration. It was such a blur, but 2 years.
Right.
And we were told, to basically rat on your neighbors for having family over.
They put a line out, right? They had a telephone number to call.
Unthinkable, right? I remember going to my mother's on Mother's Day, and it's about a 50-minute drive, and I had people warning me I was going to get arrested. It's unthinkable if you think about it. I was like, I'm visiting my mom on Mother's Day.
Right.
And just to think that people were, I think some people wanted to call the cops on me, who I knew, who I would consider friends, because we were just so
scared. Everybody was scared,
and told to be scared, and then like your point of a radical, like I was looked at as a radical for going to see my mom on Mother's Day.
Yeah,
right? I was a radical. I was a bad boy. I just wanted to see my mom.
Right, I hear you.
Right, and it just really broke people, and I don't even know if what we can do to come back from it. It feels like a blur, and that's just a small example, but it's an example of how we were just so different from that point forward. And I really haven't seen society go back to where we were. I mean, I'm not going to get into the mask issue, but people are afraid still.
Well, the news terrifies people. I mean, just look what's happening in the Middle East right now.
yeah, I'm like, I don't know if I'm a bad person, but it just feels like that's been happening my whole life. War in the Middle East, it just feels like a kind of a, all right, well, it's going to happen again and again and again. And I just kind of don't pay attention to it.
Right.
I'm sure, I don't know. I'm sure 12 years ago there was a war in the Middle East. Maybe 30 years ago there was probably a war in the Middle East. 6 years ago. It just feels like it's always happening. So I don't know why I'm afraid of it. But I'm kind of getting off topic, I guess.
No, I appreciate it, Matthew. I really do, and I agree with you. I think that the pandemic is to blame, and I think that the rise of social media is to blame, that the anonymity of the internet is to blame. I think there's a lot of factors involved.
Thanks for your time.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. It's very interesting, and people feed on it. And I mean, we've created terminology surrounding it, right? 5 years ago, had you heard of doom scrolling? It's a thing now. And the social media companies, I know it sounds like I'm picking on them, but they survive by us using their product. I don't think that's a secret. And the algorithms are designed to keep you doom scrolling. It all plays a role. Let's go back to the phone lines and say hello to James. James, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning.
What's on your mind?
Yes, time for respectful discussion.
Sure.
In the past hour, when you were discussing the green hydrogen project and the fact that a $240 million investment had just been announced and that it happens to come from an investment firm in New York, and I think you used the words "makes you wonder," doesn't it?
Well, to put it into context, James, the Premier was pretty adamant about Canada First when we started this 51st state discussion, right? He was on this program and said the very same thing, and then all of a sudden, now we're getting American investment into projects in Nova Scotia.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that that's what you meant. I'm not sure Canada First, other than perhaps in your mind, means we don't want American investment. In fact, I would think it's the exact opposite. We want American companies to invest in Canada and create jobs and tax revenue and salaries in Canada. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anybody you can find that's against American investment into Canada.
Well, let's ask the question.
I challenge you to find anybody.
Let's ask the question. We'll put it out there to the listeners. James, I'll ask you this question. I get the jobs angle. I really do. I get the investment into a rural community in Point Tupper that has fallen on tough times with the paper mill closure. I absolutely get that. I get that in the Indigenous community being heavily involved in this. All of that being said, the profits are going to go to that American company, right?
Yes, but yes. If there were a Canadian company that wished to invest, wouldn't that be nice? But unfortunately, there isn't.
Fair point. Thank you, sir.
Anyway.
Have a good one.
Bye.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open line continues after the break. Welcome back. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Austin to the program. Austin is a first-time caller. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how's it going this afternoon?
Awesome. Appreciate the call. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to kind of add on what the previous caller was saying. He was saying that, COVID kind of screwed with a lot of people's heads. It really polarized people when they were stuck at home, and I really couldn't agree more. It felt like we were living a George Orwell novel,
1984. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I just feel like social media in that time really kind of polarized people. You get on there, and whether you're on one side or another, the algorithm is meant to keep you on there, right?
It is.
So it's going to start feeding you things that you believe in, whether you're on the left or the right or whatever. And I think it creates a very large confirmation bias where you think, how could that guy possibly think that when all I'm seeing is this?
Right.
But then he's thinking the same, seeing different things on his feed, right? So I think a huge confirmation bias is involved with social media these days.
And not to mention that, the longer you stay on and the more areas of one side of an issue you go to, the algorithm's designed to keep you there. So you think that's what everybody's
100%.
saying, right?
Yeah, and that's absolutely leaking into our politics, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess it's short and sweet. That's all I really had to say today.
Appreciate it, Austin. Thanks for calling.
You have a great day.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Always good to hear from first-time callers. Long-time listener, first-time caller, right? That's the saying as it goes. Let's welcome Yaz to the show. Yaz, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Dan? Dan, actually, this is the first time me calling you. Usually I talked to Rick before, and then Todd, and then you're the first one. But Dan, I'm just curious. Like, it's understandable. Like, I'm just a little bit more confused of how things are right now. With this gas price is going to go up, and the panic is pretty much on. Like, at this point, because people are going to be rushing to the gas stations and stuff like that. But I mean, like, it's just to my knowledge. I mean, isn't the fuel it's from Alberta, and then goes from Alberta to go to the States, get cleaned up, and then get all this oiled, and then the gas comes back to us type of thing. We get like the end of it type of part of it.
Very little. Very little of that oil that goes from Alberta comes back to Canada. Most of it comes to us from overseas, particularly in the Middle East, of where the conflict is happening.
Okay, I gotcha. It's just more upsetting because now the fuel's going to go up, groceries going to go back up, our wages still keeps going down. Like, it's a lot of stress on a lot of us. Like, I got a full-time job. I do the other landscaping in the summertime with my full-time job. It's just too much too many hours out there working, but less time at home with the family and everything else. But even try to make that money last you and things like that. It's too much on all of us, and I don't know how much we all can handle of this type of stuff, right? So
it certainly has a ripple effect. That is absolutely for sure.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, you have yourself a great day, man.
You too, yes. No, I appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. And all of that being said, oil is a world commodity, right? It's traded globally, and when the attacks happened and the Strait of Hormuz, which is a small neck of land that comes from the Persian Gulf, was closed to traffic because of the conflict and the bombing that's going on. World oil prices shot through the roof. Like Brent, which is the European benchmark, the West Texas International, which is the North American benchmark, they all gained $5 or $6 a barrel off the top. And if you've checked your retirement savings today, I don't recommend it if you haven't already. The world markets are in a tailspin. We're looking at 1,000 points or more down on the Dow. I haven't looked at the TSX yet, but I'm assuming it's very much the same. And we're feeling the effects of this. And the biggest concern, and I don't want to take up a lot of time, but the biggest concern is the lack of an exit strategy. The Dow, the American markets don't want a long, protracted war in Iran, and they're pricing that in right now. So if you haven't checked those retirement portfolios, you might be in for a bit of a shock this morning. Hello, Jeff.
Good morning to you. On a lighter subject, I just wanted to briefly comment on the lack of communication. I find the cell phone itself, people are so engaged that they're not aware of their surroundings. And gone are the days when you greet somebody as you're passing by, because there's the mentality, stranger danger, that everyone you don't know is not to be trusted. And your best friend one time was a stranger. I don't know if it will ever come back, but I do agree with you. In a social setting, if you disagree with the parties, you're no longer on their social calendar. And I guess that's all I really have to say.
Appreciate it, Jeff, and I agree with you that the access to social media via the phone. I'll tell you that most of the people that you'll see, and I'm sure some of you are going to disagree with me, but that's why we're having these discussions. Most of the people that you'll see that are on the bus or walking on the street that are completely oblivious to their surroundings are engaged in social media of some sort. They're checking, I know Facebook is outdated and I'm old, but Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or I don't know, Twitter. I don't know if anybody uses that anymore either. It turned into a toxic soup, and you're going to get what you pay for when you go into those social media sites. But I'll tell you that most of them are most of the people that are enveloped in their phones are on those social media sites because the algorithm is keeping them there, and the algorithm is feeding this loss of ability to be able to have a conversation. If you have a late millennial, maybe Gen Z, nephew, son, daughter, call them and watch how, what's the word I'm looking for? Watch how uncomfortable they are answering their phones. They'll text you. They'll snap pictures and selfies and everything else, but the pushing the green button, maybe it's different on other phones, but it's green on mine. The green button and saying hello and having a conversation. I mean, kids, okay, I'm sure mom calls their kids a lot. But when you're dealing with a younger generation that have grown up exclusively with that device in their hand, they become there's anxiety attached to pressing the green button and speaking on the phone. And I think that's part of this as well, is that we have lost the communication ability. We've lost the ability to have a discussion. We've lost the ability to think on our feet, right? When you're texting, you can, and I know I do it, you can type into your phone and then, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't say that, right? And then you hit the delete button, and then I type something else, and like, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. So you can craft your response, right? Sometimes I don't. Sometimes that gets me in trouble. But do it. Just try it. Call somebody that's younger than you, and if you haven't called your mom, call your mom, right? But they anxiety. They are uncomfortable having a conversation even on the device that's in their hand all the time. It's interesting, isn't it? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Have we lost the ability to have respectful conversation? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the news. All right, welcome back. Emails before we hit to the phone lines. This one from Tom. I think the short answer is yes. We have lost the ability to have a respectful conversation. Even on your show, Dan, when a call is going in a direction that doesn't suit you, and he puts in brackets many times, will simply say, thanks for the call, and let the caller go. Then after the caller's gone, you continue with whatever's being discussed, basically giving you the last word. It's hard to have a respectful conversation when one party decides to abruptly end the conversation when someone simply has an opposing opinion. Like you said, Dan, the COVID shutdown rules started what we are currently dealing with regards to the way that people now communicate, and it is a sad situation. Colin writes, Dan, I'm 36, and the nature of my job requires me to make and take phone calls, but my skin crawls when people call. It's why I email you and Todd and Rick before that. It's just too stressful to talk. I always prefer to text or email to a call. If it's a paper trail, it's accountability, and it shows time to think before speaking. The only time I'd say taking a call would be comfortable if it would come if someone texts first to say they're going to call. Interesting perspective. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Eric.
Hey, how you doing, Dan?
I am well. What's on your mind?
Well, you know what? I'm really glad you brought up this topic today and had a gentleman on that wrote that book, because it could be the catalyst, maybe a brave new world where people will listen to one another and not jump to conclusions about what the other person says. And you're right, it is a divisive world today. And I found it very interesting there with Trump, what you said, that if you just agree with his policies, you're a left-wing radical, and if you agree with him, you're a right-wing wingnut.
Right.
And that's just the way that it is. You know, something I found very interesting, and I must admit, at one time I only listened to one perspective. Now I try to have a broader perspective on things. So I like to listen to both sides. But I've seen this so much with my friends. You'll have one person that listens to CNN and MSNBC, and you have somebody else that listens to Fox, we'll say, in the mainstream media. And on podcast, you'll have somebody like Megyn Kelly or Parker Bet David and what they say, and then you'll have somebody from the left wing saying something. And the person, both people have not done any research, and they're willing to almost fist fight, regurgitating what somebody else has told them, because so often our opinions are made about things by somebody else's narrative. So I think the best thing to do is, it's brought me some peace. I'll listen to the left and I'll listen to the right, and I'll see what happens down the road and which one's gives you fruition to what's being said. And I think it's right about COVID, because with COVID you had misinformation, disinformation, and malformation from both sides. So I really think this is a positive podcast you're having this morning, Dan, because you're making people think to realize we all have opinions, and to think about, is our opinion based on what we know and what we research and listen to, or is it caused by somebody else's narrative? I guess that's what I like to say.
Eric, Todd used to say that one person's truth is another person's fallacy, and I think that's kind of what you're getting at.
It can be, yeah. It can be. But one more thing, let's say, for an example, okay, I believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And if I wanted to talk about Eucharistic miracles and somebody else was an atheist, you can be cut off. And that can lead to people being disgruntled one with the other. And that's not the way it should be. We should be able to come on your show, and I give you credit. You're able to express your opinions. You may disagree or agree, and it's done in a reasonable way. And therefore, one side or the other is not getting mad at each other. So I think this is very positive, bringing this topic onto the air today. I'd like to thank you.
Appreciate that, Eric. Have a good day.
Okay, bye-bye.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Have no disillusion, folks, that people get mad at what we do here. Just ask Vanessa. She takes a lot of heat from people who will listen to conversations and completely disagree, and will call her to register their disapproval of said subject matter, which drives me bananas. Well, editorial comment here. If you have a concern or a query, a question, a complaint that you want to have a discussion about, and Vanessa's the most wonderful person in the world. We all agree with that. But it isn't going to accomplish anything yelling at her. Yell at me. It's what I get paid for. Allegedly. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Dan.
What's on your mind?
Well, the subject is somewhat important to me. I have 2 kids, and I'm divorced now. And if I say anything to my ex, she calls the cops on me. I've been arrested 15 times. I've never touched her. I've never done anything malicious. And we spent 15 years together, and now I can't say a thing. And my 2 kids, they're going to Mexico in about a week. And there's a measles outbreak there. And I can't even bring that subject matter up to her. I don't even know if they're immune or not. So, I mean, communication is that's why I love you, Dan, because, and 95.7, because you allow people a voice. And I think that's important. And I think our laws need to change is what's going on. I had a no contact order with her, and I called my kids from in jail, and I got arrested for that. Well, I mean, I got charged for it, I guess. But, you know, I'm in jail, and I get 30 more charges, 30 more breaches. So I think times come where we don't get angry at situations. We just find a way to communicate better. And that's absolutely. And I mean, if you get offended, like if you're accosted or whatever, understandably, but if you get offended, you can't use the law to justify yourself. And I mean, like, I see my kids like 2 hours a week, and my daughter used to fall asleep on my shoulders going for walks in the woods. Like, it was just every day we go for walks in the woods. And my son used to hold my hand, and now I see him 2 hours a week. It's ridiculous. Anyway.
Thanks, Joe. We're just up against the break, my friend. I appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. And then you work the family dynamic into things, right? And then you have relationship breakdowns, and that creates animosity, and the list goes on. And I know Joe's not alone out there with some of the concerns that he has raised with regards to that. Time for us to take another break. You're listening to The Open Line right here on the Todd Veinotte Show. The lines are open, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We lost the ability to communicate. We're back after the break. All right, welcome back. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That is the number. We'll go right to the phones and say hello to Stephen. Stephen, how are you?
How's it going, Dan?
What's on your mind?
Just sticking with the conversation there about how people have an inability to say they're wrong and have conversations. This is nothing new. We've had this going on for, as long as human beings have been alive. It's why we have wars, why we have fights. People, it's kind of like it's a cowardice and a weakness, because if you admit you're wrong, it means you're less of a human being. And people can't do that. It's not going to change unless people become self-honest and say, yes, I'm human, I can be wrong.
Right. And I think you hit the nail right on the head, Stephen. I think that if we are going to affect change, then we have to admit we're wrong, right?
It's self-honesty. If it comes down to being fair, logical, and self-honest, and those are three of the hardest things that a lot of people can't do.
Right. I hear you. Absolutely hear you.
I mean, that's why we're having wars in the world right now, because people can't admit that, okay, I might be wrong, you might be right, let's sit down and talk about it.
Right.
Because it's easier to kill off your enemy than it is to compromise and have a conversation.
And admit that you're wrong, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate
it.
All right.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Rob writes, social media is designed to constantly confirm your own perspective, and the more you subscribe to a particular view, the more that view will be pushed to your feed. It's one of the reasons why this show and shows like it are so important on talk radio. You'll always hear a relatively diverse set of views, because the algorithm is simply the airwaves to a host of voices. Rob writes, and I had a good giggle on this one, Don. It says, hey, Dan, it's no fun emailing you anymore since I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, with his smiley face. Your comments about cell phones reminded me of my years teaching at university. In my early years, I would enter a classroom and hear so much noise that it sounded like I was in a bar on a Saturday night. Now, when I walk in, I feel like I'm walking into a funeral home. Times have changed. Well, Don, I'm sure I'll say something that you and I will disagree with in the weeks and the months ahead, but I do appreciate the email. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Dan. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Oh, what's on my mind? Okay, well, I really enjoy listening to your show. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Especially today. You're very welcome. I called that, I'm calling now because I heard that guy called in from jail. Is that right?
Yeah, well, he's not in jail now, but he was.
Okay, yeah, and he had a lot to blame on the justice system. Would you say that's right?
Well, he did, and I know where you're kind of going with this, Ben. You're going to suggest that he should take some blame too, right?
100%.
Right, and sometimes that's hard for us to admit as human beings. I
guess so. Yeah, I have also been in trouble many times, and I have to say that I have been treated fairly, and I thought that it was an eye-opener, and I accepted that I made mistakes, and I have moved on, and I have tried to take those mistakes in my life and make myself a better person.
It's kind of what jail and the system is designed to do, is to rehabilitate, right?
Well, I hope that's what it's doing, right?
Right.
I'm not just, my goal wasn't to call and mock this person. It's just that, there's a lot of people out there that care. I really feel that way. And we're just so caught up with the negativity. And it's been like this for decades, right? It's just whatever color or whatever ice cream that, you know what I mean? It's whatever flavor, it's however you want to like dip your fingers into. And I just feel that social media is playing a huge part. I also feel that the Trump ideology, the whole MAGA thing, it's not healthy at all. The whole bullyism. And I do feel that we're on the verge of actually accepting each other. And I think that we've got no choice. It's a small world now. And I really hope that people start accepting each other. Just a quick little story here. I work with a guy who's like 110% Trump. And I voted for Trudeau. I voted for Harper. I voted for Houston. I would like to say I'm a centralist. I'm more lefty. I'd like to call myself a conservative liberal. But we get along really well. He's like a brother to me, and he drives me crazy. The things that he says drives me nuts. I want to poke him in the eye sometimes, right? But I can't do that,
right?
Because this is what he believes. He's a good person. I love him so much. He's an amazing person, but this is what he believes. I have to accept that. And we work together. We hang out together. It's not always about politics.
Right.
And I cannot stand Trump. I think that he is the devil. And I firmly believe that what he's doing in Iran is a good thing. Do you know what I mean?
I hear you. No, many people share your opinion, Ben.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to not like that person because, in my opinion, this is an opinion show, right, Dan?
It is. Yep.
I firmly feel that he's a pedophile. I think that we've got the wrong person who is running the most powerful country in the world. Canada is not the 51st state, never will be, ever, in my opinion. But we're considered that way because we're just so united, right? That he's such an a-hole that he just rubs it in your face, and this is just what he's like. I don't agree with how he runs things, but I just feel that it's difficult with what he's doing out there, but I think it's the best thing. But overall, we can do better as in terms of humanity. So we should just continue to try our best to love each other.
Thanks,
you know
Ben.
What I mean?
I hear you. I appreciate the
you.
call, sir. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Last word today goes to Brian. Brian, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
Just last word of the day, I'll give you a quote that I live by.
Sure.
I'm at the stage in life where I stay out of arguments. Even if you say 1 + 1 is 5, you're right. Have fun with that.
Right. And the interesting part is that you can disagree with the math, but you should, at least be able to have a beer with the person that's doing the math, right?
Exactly. So I'm too old now. It's like, you know what? If that's how you think, that's how you think. I can't change your mind. Let's just have fun with it.
Brian, I appreciate it, sir.
All right. Have a good one.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to do this again tomorrow. Don't forget, tomorrow is Wednesday, and that means that Dr. John Gillis is here during the 11 o'clock hour. We'll move the open hour to 12 o'clock noon to facilitate that, and I look forward to your conversation. Great calls today, everybody. Great emails. Some of you suggesting perhaps that I'm a little bit crazy to be some of the takes I take on this, but I think it's important to have discussions, and I think it's important that we welcome discussion to the air and to the program. That's what the open hour exists for, right? I'm not going to agree with you every time that you make an opinion, right? I'm going to challenge that, but I respect your ability to have the ability to do that, if that makes any sense. I respect your opinion. I'm not going to agree with everything, and I may push back on it. But you still have the ability to voice it. And that's what we try to do here on the open hour. Time for us to take another break here on the program. Don't forget, it's Tuesday, folks. You know what that means, right? We're going to stop down. We're going to take a break for the news. We're going to get the latest on what's happening in our world and around the world these days to keep you up to date on the latest on the war in Iran. And it looks as if this thing isn't getting any better anytime soon. There's all the headlines I'm reading are escalation here, escalation that. So I think we're going to have to strap in, folks, and this one's not going to be over very quickly. And again, I urge you, if you have any investments, I shouldn't laugh because I know that there's a lot of people out there that will be a little bit poorer today. If you check your investments, I checked mine before I came on the air. And as I'm on the air and the Dow's down 1,100 points, the TSX is down, and all the markets are down. Oil is up. It's not looking good. We just wiped out a whole bunch of gains that we had, and that's what happens when we have conflicts in the world that don't have end dates attached to them. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, Dr. Rob Thacker is in the house. He's here to answer your science questions. Did you have something for the doctor? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Sceince Files. After the news. It's time for Sceince Files. The telephone lines are open, folks. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. That is the number if you want to access the program and ask Dr. Rob Thacker a science or space question. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Welcome back to Sceince Files, Dr. Rob.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
I guess I should turn your microphones on. The science of not pushing the buttons.
I speak loud enough so even if you don't have the mic on, you can hear me.
Rob, we were talking as part of the last hour on the show about our ability to lost our ability to communicate, to admit that we're wrong.
No, you haven't. Right. £5, please.
The one of the sort of areas that it kind of went to was younger generations and their reliance on their devices and their communication way they communicate has changed, right? And I relayed a story about calling your younger siblings or your nieces or your nephews on the phone, like actually dialing the numbers and having them answer it, and it creates anxiety because the younger generations don't communicate the same way that we do. I would imagine in your profession, dealing with young minds that are coming to the university, that you have interactions with students that are very much like that.
That's actually a tricky question because the anxiety about the telephone I have definitely seen. right? That is clear and obvious. But in terms of interpersonal interaction, we've seen a little bit of a growth of this idea that professors are really unapproachable and so on, which, sorry. I mean, I really try to be as approachable as I can be. Like, I'll talk about the sort of like things that I find difficult and so on, which admittedly in some cases might be like highfalutin stuff. But no, I'm always trying to be approachable because learning is a social thing, right? I mean, there's this concept that you can learn on your own. Now, to a certain extent, you can. I would happily admit to that. In fact, I've done that myself extensively. But the best learning happens in a social environment. Like that's why science is largely a collaborative effort. Like this idea of the lone genius. I mean, yeah, sure, there are advances that are like that, but all of that proceeds on the basis of other stuff. And talking to other people about it.
It's always good to have somebody to bounce an idea off of, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, so I would say that actually, in terms of interpersonal discussions, I still get to talk with a lot of incoming students in a way that I think is really very healthy. Right. The thing that I probably don't have a good handle on is the ones that I don't get to talk to, where their headspace is at. Right. So 10, 15 years ago, that might have been like, dude's so uncool, I don't want to talk to him. Right? Now, that's definitely true, but but there may be other reasons, like they find me intimidating or something like that. So that is a difficult issue to work through in general, and I don't really have a good idea. What the university has tried to do is to provide more support for students that's peer level. Right, so students providing homework help and things like that. We have something called the Snap Center that does that. That's great, right? And don't get me wrong, I think that's totally cool. But I would, as the professor in a class, really like the students just to come and talk to me and say, like, we're having a problem with this, versus it being handled by a student who does give me some feedback, but not always enough to know what's really going on.
Right. From a scientist perspective. Right. Mm-hmm. This conversation began with an author that's written a book about how we're unable to admit that we're wrong. Right. When you're in the research world, right, and are in the sphere of investigating something in science, and I'm not a scientist, I'll fully admit that. Is it difficult that you put your
dark side,
right? You keep trying, Rob. Anyway, is it difficult if you're on a project and you've been on a project for years, and suddenly the experiments or the numbers don't add up, and you have to admit that maybe you were wrong about something?
So let me sort of like pull the layer of the onion off the way science works, right? So it's rare that you'll have a situation in which you get basically nothing out of an experiment, right? You're always doing multiple things. So what is common, though, is for the key thing that you're looking for to not work. And so I can give you an example. People know about the Higgs boson and CERN finding it and so on. What they probably don't know is Fermilab was trying to find it as well with a very limited particle accelerator, and they didn't find it, right? So all of that said, even though that was what they were trying to do, right, they were doing lots of other things at the same time as well with the experimental data and so on. So usually that's what happens in science. You try not to be sort of like one and done, because that's high risk. Right. So yes, you will definitely have situations where people come up and say, we were looking for X and we didn't find it. The best example I can give right now is like Planet 10 searches and things like that, looking for evidence of another big planet out there. And they've basically all come up with nothing. Right, so that happens, but when it happens, you are supposed to say, this is what happened. I'm sorry, we didn't get what we were expecting. And so I've actually had this happen very recently with a student's thesis, where we were hoping to find something on the basis of a scientific theory, and it's not worked, right? And so now we're asking ourselves, why didn't it work? Right, so it's rare to have a situation where there's no information coming out of whatever your answer may be. Right, but yes, it does happen sometimes.
And the two competing, or three or four or five competing groups, like you're talking about CERN, in the scientific community, is it very much like in the sporting community when somebody gets there first? Is there bragging rights, and is there that kind of thing?
Yeah, so let me try and separate two things.
Sure.
Right? So the scientific method, right, is meant to be objective, right? And this has been studied and so on. And philosophers will still have some concerns about it, which I understand, but there is this idea that things should be testable and repeatable.
Right.
Right. So where things get messy and difficult is when you have different research groups trying to address the same question, but with different approaches that ultimately give somewhat different answers. And then it can get really messy because it's very difficult to compare. And people will argue for one thing or another, and there's no common ground in the arguments. And those can become a bit chest thumping, if I'm honest. There's also the situation of people who want to be the first into a thing.
Right.
Right? Because that's staking a claim, right? And there are actually some people, like the famous UK chemist Harry Croteau, they like to do one thing and then move on to the next thing and move on to the next thing and so on. And they don't like sort of like going down into the details of one particular thing. So there is a well-known habit amongst certain scientists of wanting to be the first person in the field, because if you're the first person in the field, everyone who comes after you is going to cite your work.
Right.
Here's the crazy thing about science. If you wrap up all of the questions and solve them and the field ends, you don't get cited.
Right. So you leave the door open, right?
So you never want to really solve everything, right? But the best thing to be is the first person into a field and then ask interesting questions that people go and pursue and try and answer, because then people are saying, oh, yeah, they had this idea and now we're proving so-and-so. So that's generally a tactic that some people use. I'm kind of in that camp personally. I like to be the first into a field. I don't like being in a field when it becomes about whether it's 7 or 8 in the last decimal digit. I don't find that particularly exciting. I like to think about the big picture questions. And so, but doesn't mean that kind of work isn't very valuable. National Institute of Standards, that's what they do all the time, right? So, yeah.
Interesting questions. That's what we do here on the Sceince Files. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the break. Welcome back, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go to the phone lines, and we'll say hello to Ron. Ron, how are you?
I'm good. First time calling in for this show.
Appreciate that.
Great, yeah.
What's your question, please?
Well, first of all, I don't know if you've seen any of the news feeds, but the Premier of BC, Eby, he's done with the time change. He's going to stop it. So after this, that's it for the BC anyway. Hopefully the rest of the country will follow in suit. But no, I thought I'd mention that. What I called in about was I got a little issue, and you guys cover a lot of topics, so I'm just going to see if Rob can answer this one.
Sure.
So I'm watching TV. I watch a lot of late night shows and stuff like that. So, and I got my speakers hooked up to my amp, and hear it through the TV's volume is just not enough. So I'm listening to it at night. If I don't turn down that volume at night when I go to bed, when I get up in the morning, I turn it on. The TV seems very loud, like it's louder than what I said, geez, I listened to it that loud last night.
Right.
So does something happen with my hearing senses or something at night?
So your hearing will actually adjust to the overall volume levels that you are in, right? So you'll go from a situation, if you're in a loud room, and you probably had this years ago, or maybe even now. So you go from a loud room into a quiet room, and your ears are ringing, right? And that is literally your overall level of sensitivity adjusting to the sound that you are in. It's a little bit like you can also have smells that you become blind to, right? Your senses will adjust over time. In the same way, even your eyes will adjust to the level of brightness, right? You'll change your pupil size to adjust that way. And with your ears, your brain is literally adjusting. And the other thing to be aware of course, is that if people literally have a long-term exposure to very loud noises, then you're just going to damage your hearing, even though you're used to listening at that level. Yeah,
I just thought it was odd because, I'm listening to it at night and it seems fine. But boy, if I don't turn that volume down at night before I go to bed, and I get up in the morning.
Well, so
wild,
when you're in bed, right, you're in a quiet environment, right? So you're adjusting to that quiet environment.
Thanks, Ron. Turn the TV down.
Yeah, really.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Tinnitus is a radio person's disease, right? I have tinnitus, and that's because for 30 years I've had these things on my ears, and maybe they were too loud, and now I get tinnitus is ringing of the ears, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, tinnitus is one of those things that I don't think is particularly well understood as well.
No.
Right? So... But yes, my wife, who's deaf, actually suffers from tinnitus a lot.
Right.
And so, yeah, loud noises literally are bad for you, right? We're not designed for loud noises. It's not something that the human, literally the ecosystem produces very often, right? And so when we live in environments that are loud, then yes, you will do damage to your hearing. I mean, honestly, if you go to a concert, don't do it too often because you'll damage your ears. You've got to remember those people up on stage, they've got ear protectors now.
And all of the sound pressure is facing you, not them.
Yeah.
Right?
So, well, it depends where their stacks are.
Very true.
Right? So, but this is a serious issue. Like if you don't look after your hearing, you can damage it pretty easily.
It's interesting because, and I know this is probably more of a Dr. John question than a Dr. Rob question, but it's interesting that mine comes and goes, right? It'll be not there. It'll be very light. It'll be extremely heavy some days, and I think there's a bunch of different environmental factors and tiredness and everything else. It's to the point that sometimes I have to put earbuds in and put white noise on to be able to shut my brain down to relax.
Yeah, that's really tough, and I'm really quite sympathetic because I know how annoying tinnitus can be. I mean, if it's really bad for my partner, she'll go a bit crazy.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I'm really sympathetic, and I'm happy that you have a way of dealing with it.
Right.
That's good because not everyone does.
But it's probably contributing to it too because you're using noise to deaden the ringing and the sleeping.
That sounds like it's a psychological factor.
It feels like it, and it just it's the placebo effect. I think it's just that okay, this is the sound of the ocean that's making me happy now, and it's not the same as the ringing in my ears because I had my headphones on too loud. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, David.
Hi there. A question for the doctor. My question actually is about the base 10 numbering system. You know, there just seems to be something special and elegant when working with it. But is that true, or is it just because we have 10 fingers and 10 toes and it seems to work for us? And the reason I ask is because I've sort of used like binary, octal, and hexadecimal.
Yeah.
You can do everything you can do with a base 10 system. But there just seems to be something like I said, sort of special about, you know, each place value is 10. So, you know, you do calculations, there are multiple of 10. There's all kinds of shortcuts and stuff like that. So is it just how our brains work, or is there something about that?
You got it, David. It's how our brains work. And so, funnily enough, I actually think if you want to talk about elegance, anything based on a power of 2 is actually a better number system than base 10 alone, right?
Well, so that would be binary then.
Yeah, so binary, if you want to go octal. Powers of 4, powers of 8 to octal as well. So hex is also really easy, and that's because you can literally take the numbers and divide them into chunks really easily when you do powers of 2. So decimal, though, we've grown up with it, and so for us, if you grow up with it, you literally feel it's natural, like we have 10 fingers, 10 toes, so that is a natural counting system, but you don't have to count with 10. If you look at the spaces between your fingers and thumbs, then how many have you got on one hand? You got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other hand. So there are actually some societies that have grown up with octal, right, rather than decimal.
Is it Rob? This might sound like an elementary question, but is it because we've used it and it's everywhere, base 10, and we're able to do that kind of mathematics in our brains?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Can you do the same thing with other systems?
If you had literally been taught to grow up with octal, right? So 0 to 7, right? Then you start with 1, 0 again, right? That would be the natural way of counting for you. You would be literally thinking about doing that. You would use the spaces when you learn and so on. So it's not that decimal is somehow magically better. It's just the system that we use. And in fact, this always blows people's minds. But in fact, probably the most creative base system ever used by humans is base 60, which goes back to the Babylonians, right? And the reason for that is when you have the number 60, think about how many divisors the number 60 has. Lots, right? So if you want to express things as fractions of a whole, base 60 is really great for that, right? Because you can divide it by 1, you can divide it by 2, you can divide it by 3, right? Divide it by 5, and so on. So base 60 is actually a really, really good base. But of course, we don't like base 60 because
I don't have 60 fingers.
We don't have exactly enough fingers and toes.
Can you tell somebody's passionate about mathematics, folks? Yeah. Really? And how many of you were looking at your hands when you said, if you look between your fingers, you know there's 4 spaces there, but you're looking
if
anyway,
you got 5 fingers and thumbs, you've got to have 4 spaces. Yep.
Why did, and this might be a broader question, but why has the world accepted base 10? Like, I mean, the currencies all work in it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I just think this is a situation where commonality has become the primary driver, right? So enough societies did eventually evolve towards base 10 that it became familiar. I mean, you can look at the counting systems, like the Roman counting system is just horrible.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's tough to believe that they got really used to that, but they did, right? So, but yeah, it's become prolific. And I mean, the really incredible thing about it is, right, it doesn't work naturally with binary, right? So when you take a decimal number and you try and represent it with binary, you actually can't do that perfectly. There are plenty of numbers that you can represent very simply in base 10, but in binary, you have to do it with like a recurring number. Right. So it's funny. Why am I passionate about this? Because we actually teach this in the computational methods course in grad school for astronomy, so students get to understand this. And so power of 10 does not fit well with a computer at all. We really have to sort of like jimmy things around. And in fact, internally, the numbers are stored in a binary form.
Right. And have forever. The computers have always used binary.
But even technically, the number line system is related to binary rather than powers of 10, even though we can express it in powers of 10 decimal form.
Great question. I appreciate that one, David. There's 2 things I've seen Dr. Rob get excited about: black holes and numbers.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people, when I teach these lectures, they're like, what's the point of this? And like when they eventually understand that there are these really fundamental things going on in computers in terms of how we represent numbers, then the light goes off. And this is really relevant, believe it or not, to AI. Right? Because now we have AI mathematics that's done with what we call very, very low precision math. And I look at that and I say, you've got 4 bits. What are the numbers that you can represent with that? And, you know, it's not very many. Right? And yet we're using that mathematics in AI models, which is really quite interesting.
4 bits is 50 cents, isn't it? We're back after the break. All right, welcome back. Dr. Rob still talking about numbers. It's one of his passions, being a physicist and well, he's just a math guy. See, I wasn't a math guy. Yeah, I've developed an appreciation for math in later life, if that makes any sense. All the way through my academic career, I was awful at it because I didn't like it.
So this is one of the really incredible things about math and people's viewpoints on math that I just like boggles my mind. Like math was invented literally to make things simpler, right? But most people see it as something that makes their life harder.
I could never get my head wrapped around it, right? I could never, but now, and then maybe, you know, some of the, and I don't want to take up too much time, but, you know, life events and you know, my joining the military and liking structure and liking everything that, you know, is everything in the apartment has to be at right angles and you know, very rigid rules, and math has very rigid rules.
Yep.
And I sit back and I look at it now going, well, you know, I really probably should have been more interested in math because it is like that.
Real social factors here that we can actually talk about, because I find this quite incredible, right? That reading to your kid is a thing.
Yes.
Right, it really is a thing that people take seriously, and it, to a large extent, doesn't matter who you are, what your educational background. Yeah, reading to your kid is a good thing, right? No one says to their kid in the stroller as you go around the store, let's count the steps. Let's count how many green peppers there are here, right? People don't do that, right? So whereas words and communication are considered to be this important thing that we really do invest in making our kids prolific at, right? With numbers, that's not true, right? And so because of that, by the time a number of people get to school, right, math is seen as this geeky thing, right, and not part of your everyday thing.
You never got called a math nerd, did you, Dr. Rob?
I didn't. I honestly didn't care because I loved math so much. I literally didn't care, right? And so we did sort of like, this is back in the days when they did like standardized testing of kids when they were really, really young. And so I obviously tested really well on mathematics, and I just truly loved it, right? So everything I did, like when I was a kid, I wanted to know what day my birthday was going to be the next year. So I realized, the number of days doesn't go in perfectly into the number of weeks. And so it's constantly changing and things like that when I was a kid. And I just like, wow, you can do so much with math. I was just amazed by it. But for most people, because they've had a hard time with it, right, they don't grow up with an affinity for it. And so they're not going to be able to pass that on to their kids, right? And I think that's a real shame, right? Because it's an amazing system that helps you do things more easily than not using math in most cases.
I think it's also, and to use myself as the example, I'm a very much a tactile learner. I learn by touching things and figuring it out. And maybe the math concepts when I was younger, I didn't understand how I could make that tactile. It was just numbers and division symbols and stuff that really upset me.
So I think the challenge is like, at some point though, it has to go from like your motor memory into your thinking memory. Right. It's not, I mean, counting, yes. Counting you can do, moving things around. And that's quite frankly how we teach most kids to do it. Right. And so it's like literally subtraction is we take these things away and you literally remove them. Right. So that is a motor thing right there. And that makes it accessible. But the hard thing, I think, for a lot of people is algebra. Right. And how we go from having numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then having a symbol
X,
that represents any number. Like there are people I've seen who literally cannot get their heads around that, right? And it doesn't matter how many times you show them, literally, I'm going to turn this number into a letter and we can put the number back in down here and it all works out. They just don't get it, right? And I would love to know more about the psychology of what's going on there, right? But you see that, right? And that stops people from being able to do things that would really help them. Like I've literally had students in we half jokingly call it astronomy for poets, like people with an arts background who want to learn about astronomy, right? And so I've had people in that course, like, and I said, okay, let's do the algebra, and they're like, I can't do algebra, right? And I literally have them, let's go up to the board, let's try this, let's try that, and then say, I literally can't do it, right? And I feel like that person has been let down by society somehow,
or the system,
right? Or the system, yeah,
right,
yeah.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Brian.
Good day, guys. Thanks for taking my call. Dr. Rob, my question might seem a little strange, but I watched this astrophysicist on YouTube, Stefan Burns. Seems to be a very intelligent man, talking about dark spots on the sun and the effects of the plasma blast on Earth and everything. But every now and again, he includes astrology in there. And I'm not a real believer that a formation of stars in the sky is going to affect anything here. I was wondering what your opinion is on that.
Yeah, so I'm just going to be upfront with you that I did do a little bit of research on Stefan Burns, and his reputation in the scientific community isn't what I would say solid. Right? So just be aware there are people putting out stuff that isn't always grounded in the most rigorous research. And so the fact that you're saying he's pulling in astrology, right, and whatever you want to do for entertainment, that's fine. But no, there's no known methodology that connects things that are literally astronomically far away to our day-to-day, right? And that's just not something that we take seriously in science, to be honest. I mean, 400, 500 years ago, astronomy and astrology were kind of similar things. Now they're not. They're very different.
One question on that. He does a lot of, like when we have a big solar flare coming towards the Earth, he'll associate that with, say, Montalea erupting at the same time, and then he would say there's an influence between the two. Do you believe that? Is that something that I can believe in, or is that something that...
Okay, this is actually quite interesting, Brian. So there aren't very many theories at all that connect solar storms to geological activity. And the only one that I know of is something that's come up very recently that, to be frank, is not taken very seriously by geologists. And that would literally require the Earth's atmosphere and the crust of the Earth to be like a giant, basically, battery. And so when you have the solar storm come along, that would require some kind of interaction between the structure in the crust, that's where you're literally developing all of this storage of charge, and the atmosphere as well. And so even the people who've written this model say that it's going to be very weak, and the only thing it might do is slightly push a certain plate system over the edge. They don't think it's ever going to be able to have enough energy to do a major thing. And I'll be completely frank with you, there's a number of geologists who just think it's silly and rubbish, right?
Appreciate the call, Brian. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Astrology and astronomy, they're spelled similarly, but they're
very different things.
Very different things.
Yeah.
I know there are people out there that are firm believers in astrology, and that's cool. That's their deal.
Yep.
But it's not science.
No, it's not. I mean, it's because if you're going to predict that people's days are going to include certain things, then you need to be specific. And if you look actually at most horoscopes, they're very general, right? So over time, horoscopes are progressively more general, so there's not really much information in them. Now, if you get a kick out of reading what's going to happen and you're happy with that,
I know some people that read them every day, and their day's not complete unless they read them.
Yeah,
so.
no, I can get that, but if you look at the actual information content, it's pretty low nowadays, right? Because if you put a lot of information in and say this is going to happen, then it gets easily scientifically testable, right? And of course, that's not going to work, right? Because you can't predict the future.
902-405-6000, you can't predict the future? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back in a minute. All right, welcome back. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's get back to the phones, and we say hello to Danny. Danny, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you fellas doing?
Not too bad. What's on your mind today, sir?
Good. I've got a question. Probably going to sound like a real stupid one to you, but...
Never a stupid question.
Okay, going at the magnitude of our universe and stuff, is there any chance that the planet Earth is simply a cancer cell in somebody's knee?
Well, that's heavy stuff.
Okay. So, I get what the sort of like overall philosophy here is. Things are in things are in things. And so is it possible that on the very largest scale, we are the equivalent of a cancer cell in someone's knee? And the long and the short is no. And so why is that? And that's because we actually know the distribution of material in the universe really, really well, right? And so as you go out bigger and bigger and bigger, and this will make you smile because I've got a fun little connection. The closest analogy I can give you is that clusters of galaxies, so these things with hundreds of billions of stars we're in a galaxy ourselves, and they tend to cluster together. And if you look at the distribution of these, they come together at what we call the nodes of the cosmic web. And if you look at it, it looks like a giant web of brain neurons, right? Even though it's not, trust me, it's not associated with the giant brain, right? The overall structure is very reminiscent of neuron structures in the brain, which it's always very amusing when people see that and they go, oh, it's the universe giant brain. And you're like, no, but it looks just like the overall layout of connected neurons.
There you go, Danny.
Okay. Very good. Thanks.
All right, appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're into that abstract theory now, aren't we?
No, it's actually quite cool. And so the reason why we get that, what we call filamentary structure in the universe, relates literally to a property of gravity, right? It's not actually related to biology in any way or any shape and form. But I know that Star Trek Discovery, they had this idea of connections that were like the fungal networks in trees through space and so on. And I think they probably may well have seen some overall layouts of the galaxy distribution and said, oh, yeah, that looks like kind of like neurons. Let's use another biological analogy. Right.
So we're not inside somebody's brain?
We are not, alas, no. On truly enormous scales, people say, well, maybe it could be so big we don't know about it. But the problem with that is it's just so big, then light takes so long to travel that it just doesn't work.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Brian.
Good day, sir. How are you doing today?
Good. Your question for Dr. Rob, please.
Dr. Rob, it's a solar power day, and I got a solar question.
Sure.
My panels are 4x8, and they're 550 watts. I'm wondering, the panels up in space for the space station and satellites, are they designed different, where they don't have to deal with the atmosphere and they have radiation and so forth?
So I know that they, for the ones they use in space, they use the really high efficiency, really pure. And so there must be some way of cooling those, because they are going to have to get rid of some of the heat energy. That's right. But I'm not sure off the top of my head precisely how they do that. The thing to remember is, if you have something that's in the sun's direct view, it's going to get very, very hot on the side facing the sun, but the side away from the sun is going to be very, very cold, right? So it may be they deliberately have a way of just getting that heat energy through to the other side and radiating it off on the other side. That might possibly be how it's done, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Would it be the same composition? With the design would be the same?
Yeah. So you're just going to be, because you want the most power you can get out of a given area, you're always looking at using the very, very best solar cells you can in space. That's one of the reasons why people look back at the efficiency of solar cells used in space over time, sort of like looking back 20 or 30 years ago. They go, oh, wow, they were using really, really good solar cells in space. And like, yes, because they had to, right? And so that's literally where some of the best solar technology goes.
Are you able to generate more power, and this might be the wrong way to describe this, per square inch of solar panel in space as opposed to on Earth because of things like Brian said, the haze, the
atmospheric absorption?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's absolutely true. But the actual value of what we call the solar constant, the amount of energy you get per square meter at the Earth, I mean, that's the same up in space as it is down on Earth, modulo atmospheric effects, right? And so, interestingly, at the wavelengths that we typically use for solar, which are visible wavelengths, the atmosphere doesn't absorb too much of that energy, right? So you don't lose too much, right? If you went to infrared, then there are places where, wow, yeah, it really does absorb.
Right.
But no, invisible, it's not actually getting rid of very much at all. It's quite a high efficiency.
Email question, Dr. Rob, and it is something that curtails from our conversation last week. If you remember back to the show, we were talking about somebody's experience with extraterrestrial life. And you were describing sort of how the process is when somebody reports an encounter or a UFO,
proof,
right?
Yeah.
And this person writes, last week, Dr. Rob said eyewitness is not considered to be scientific evidence. Then why are so many people in prison based on eyewitnesses? If the law accepts eyewitness testimony to put a person in jail, then why does science not accept it? Is science above the law?
Is science above the law? Science just has different standards to law, right? And that's the way to think about it. It's not about whether we're above it or beneath it. It's just different ways of inquiring about the universe, right? And the main thing that I would say is different here is reproducibility, right? So scientific standards have a requirement of reproducibility, and that literally makes one-off experiments really problematic, right? So, law, on the other hand, is dealing with single situations. It can't avoid it.
Right.
And so all of that said, you talk to most lawyers and what they actually think about eyewitness evidence, and it's not that good, right? They know.
It's part of the evidentiary pie.
Yeah, but it's even so. It's known that eyewitness testimony changes with time. That is known, right? And that's something that courts have to deal with.
So your theory of stealing a piece of equipment is the best way to prove it.
I truly, like the day someone says I was abducted and here's the proof, I'm listed.
Right. Well, no doubt. You'll have a lineup of scientists then.
Yeah.
One more email question before we say goodbye for the day, and it comes to us from Lee, and it says, when we had the abnormally long dry period last year, where'd all the moisture go? There must have been regions or countries that had more rain than we would usually get, but we didn't really hear about it, or am I remembering my grade 7 science wrong?
No. You're totally right. So that's one of the big problems with climate change, right? There's going to be regions that get drier and regions that get wetter, right? And so, yes, when we're not having rainfall because we have a prolonged situation with either the jet stream keeping things out or something like that, then yes, that moisture is winding up somewhere, right? But it's I don't know off the top of my head where that would be.
Water's still evaporating, right? It has to go somewhere.
Exactly. So it's going to be going to another place. I mean, this is one of the challenges with climate change when people start sort of thinking about, well, where can I go? What's going to be sort of like less affected by climate change? And the answer is, I think a lot of places are actually at risk now of having longer dry spells, right? And for that matter, torrential rains, because we've seen it here. Like when we have, like literally, we see manhole covers popping off because the volume of water coming down is so large, right? And I don't ever remember seeing that as a kid, right? So yeah, I mean, it's true. Yeah, if it's not raining here, that moisture is going somewhere else.
Moisture content in snow, and I know this is probably a broad question, but we've had a significant amount of snow this year. Do you think that that's going to be enough to sort of reverse the drought conditions?
Replenish the aquifers? So one of the interesting things it may do is it may actually help with the molds to decompose the leaves. Right. So it may help from the fire protection side of things. Will it be enough water at the end of the day? You'd have to ask an hydrologist. Right. I don't know off the top of my head. I would be surprised if that's true. Because I mean,
just the amount of water we need.
The water's got to get down into the aquifers as well, right? That's the key thing, right? So if one of the challenges is if you have a very, very dry surface, then water can't penetrate and it just flows off, right? So that's one of the things we're dealing with, and why I know holidaymakers hate it, but drizzle is great for the ecosystem. It really is. It keeps things moist, right? And it allows water to penetrate the surface as well.
As always, my pleasure, Dr. Rob.
Thanks, everyone, for the great questions.
And we'll see you next week. That is Dr. Rob Thacker. He's here every Tuesday from 12 until 1. Thanks to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass, rock star as always. We have a busy show planned for you tomorrow. Of course, Dr. John will be here to answer your medical-related questions. That's going to happen at 11 o'clock. Then we'll shift the open hour to noon. We'll also keep our eyes glued on downtown Halifax. There's supposed to be a gathering down there at lunchtime tomorrow to show opposition to the cuts the government made in the budgets. We'll keep you up to speed on that as well. Thank you to all of you who dialed the numbers and joined the conversation. It was great conversation today. See, we maybe haven't lost the ability to do it. We're going to do that open hour again tomorrow. Hope that you join the program. Until then, everybody, watch out for the snow tomorrow. The parking ban's on. Not my decision, but it is. We'll see you tomorrow. Be well, and remember, be kind to one another.